Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record reflect that Beth Collins-Wedge is not here yet, or the director, but everyone else is here. Principal, student rep. Okay, we don't have student reps, so principals, who would like to begin?
December 2nd, we have our yearbook activity pictures. December 13th, we have our holiday music concert, kindergarten through second grade. That will be here in the high school auditorium at 1 o'clock. And the PTA has a school spirit wear sale starting now, and it should be here by Christmas if you want those as Christmas gifts. We've got order blanks in the office if you're interested. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to comment on a couple of things that have happened since we didn't get to come last time because there was conferences. Our elementary conferences were highly successful. We had over 90% attendance at 5th and 6th grade. Junior high, not quite as good, but we were hovering in the 60% range. And afterwards, some of the ones that didn't call, we called them for personal meetings, so they've been trickling in. We've been getting a whole of lots of them. We had, on November 11th, we had a very nice Veterans Day program. It was well attended. It was unfortunately very cold outside that day, but we got it off anyway, and it was very well attended and very nice. Our elementary Knowledge Bowl team, we had two groups from 6th grade and a couple 5th graders make it to the regional tournament after they had consistently placed 1 and 2 in most of the regular season meets. They ended up placing 3rd in the regional meet. They missed 2nd when going to state by 1 point. Last question. So they did very well. Junior high is still going. They have their regional meet. They've made it as well next week. So I think that's about all I have.
How many teams were at the regional competition?
24.
24, and we came in third?
Third, yeah.
Third.
Yeah. With one team, and actually our second team that had half 5th graders on it took 10th that day. So we had 2 teams that were doing very well. I guess in the last thing, we did buy the student body T-shirts for getting reward school status for their testing last spring, so I was going to share some of those with you guys as well.
Thank you, Jeff.
Did you say extra large or double? She said large.
Larger word.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
It's there.
There's a larger goal. You want to go up?
Then I can wear it to basketball. These are really nice.
Mine went to sleep.
Oh, just check. Oh, yeah. 2 years.
Yeah, she wanted to go with the bright yellow.
Yes.
Bright yellow.
Yes.
She's there.
There you go. Thank you.
I always allow for shrinkage.
There you go.
Well,
That's all I got.
Excuses.
well,
Thank you.
thank you very much. I like that. I like the color. Yeah. Good, thank you. Anything else, Jeff?
That's all I got.
Okay. We'll move on then. 5.0 Achievement Recognition. We have 2, 3. We have Emma Benda and Hannah Mackey were named to the Minnesota State High School Coaches Association All-Star Academic Volleyball Team. Students must carry a 3.8 GPA throughout their high school career to earn this honor, and these two young ladies have done that, so congratulations to them. And the girls volleyball team was awarded a silver award by the Coaches Association for having an average GPA of 3.778. Congratulations to them also. And Emma Benda was also named to the All Arrowhead Conference volleyball team. So congratulations to her, she's doing very well. They all are. All the students are doing very well. Visitor input. Anyone who's on the agenda who wishes to say something, step up to the podium. State your name. Anybody? Okay. Thank you. Agenda changes and deletions. Debbie?
I have none.
Okay. 8.0, approve the minutes of the regular meeting of November 12th, 2013. So vote.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or changes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 9.0, business office affairs. 9.1, approve the treasurer's report. Nora?
I went through the bills for the month of November, second check writing. We had disbursements of $134,838.57. I move that we approve the report.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, those all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 9.2, acceptance of gift. We have two of them. One from the Elks Lodge, number 1161, I'm sorry, for $300 to the, what do you call it now?
Family and
Family?
Consumer Science.
Yes, I always call it home ec, but it still screws me up. For troop stockings, and one from Mesabi Range Auxiliary Post 1172 for $25 to the same outfit, the same class. I'm not going to do it. So I'd like to need a motion to accept these and also to send a letter thanking them for their donations.
I'll move that we accept the gifts.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 9.3, approve the 2013-2014 revised budget. And
Candace is going to
Candace
go
is here.
over the revised budget.
In your packets, I have included a few pages. So the first page is just the preliminary budget that you had approved back in June, and I just put that in there for informational purposes. So we will go on to 9.32, which is our revised budget. Based on our numbers, Debbie and I discussed having a small little decrease to get us till the end of the year, which actually ended up being at the same number as we had for the preliminary budget, so we were sitting really well for that. We have all of our audited numbers in column D in lines 9 through 44. So I will go through kind of line by line for at least Fund 1 and then kind of touch base on a couple of these other ones. So starting on line 9 for our staff development, we do not have any audited fund balances in there. We were carrying balances forward from previous years, but in fiscal year 13 we did spend down those previous year's fund balances to get us to zero. And now that the 2% of our Gen Ed aid has come back, so that is why I'm showing revenue and expenditures in there. Our 2% of our Gen Ed aid was $132,378 that we needed to allocate. So for revenue for district, we have $52,951. The Nelshin has $13,238. Franklin, $30,447. Junior high, $13,238, and the senior high staff development has $22,504. We always expect to expense all that we bring in for revenue there, so we're showing that we should have no fund balance at the end of the year. For the principal accounts, we have $25,338 as our audited fund balance. We never know how much revenue we're going to have because that includes our target funds and our, is that
Pop machine.
Pop machines and stuff.
Candy
So
machine at the high school.
that's kind of an unknown, and we don't really plan for any expenditures out of there because we never know how much revenue we're going to bring in. So as of right now, we are projected to have a fund balance of $25,338, but that will fluctuate depending on revenues and expenditures. Gifted and talented, we have an audited fund balance of $75,198. We expect to bring in $15,231 for revenue and expense $25,634, bringing us to $64,795. In that gifted and talented, we spend money on the Knowledge Bowl entry fees, travel for that, our spelling bee, and then also we can actually code some of our teachers there that have, that teach some of the upper classes that you need to take the AccuPlacer to get into. So we do code one of our teachers there too as part of that. Transition for pre-K, we have $1,872 there as our audited fund balance. We don't expect to bring in any revenue. That was kind of a new revenue last in fiscal year 12. But we are expected to have $500 in expenditures that we are thinking I've talked with Lynn, and I think we will spend some of that on kindergarten roundup supplies. So we will bring that down to $1,372 as our fund balance. CNC severance, we have $6,166 in there. We asked for $10,000 from the state to fund that, and we expect to have $10,775. That is to cover some of our retirees that we still have from Old Gilbert. So that we should have about $5,391 at the end of the year. Crime, we have $61,576, expected to bring in $39,213 and spend $39,786. That covers any safety patrol, bullying workshops, the canines that we have come in during the year. So, and that will bring us down to the $61,003 that we're projecting at the end of the year. This technology of the $700,000, that was the set aside that we did last December. As of right now, we have spent $381,000 out of that fund, and I have attached a sheet back here, 9.35, I think it is, and that has kind of broken down of what we've spent it on, our second year of our iPad implementation, our workshop replacement, our server replacement, and those are actual costs for the year that I have had as of today. So that is where the $321,000 or $319,000 is kind of where we're sitting right now. We do have a couple POs sitting out there to take us down to that $319,000. The taconite money, we do not carry a fund balance there because it rolls into just our unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. But this year we received $845,000 on that tax forfeited land. So we expect to have that at the end of the year because it'll just roll into our unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. Our CNC, we have $99,185. We do not have any revenue coming in. That was a one-time money that we got from the state, and we expect to spend $33,627, which will bring that down to $65,558. We have coded our media center people from Gilbert in there, and if we keep Lee or any of our media center people over there in that fund at the certain percentages that we have them at now, we should have about maybe 2 years left of that money, and then it'll just be coming out of our unassigned fund balance. Our unassigned fund balance audited was $2,986,253. We expect to bring $9,820,136 in and spend $9,899,220, which will bring it down to $2,907,169. Now that $9,899,000, that does take into account the settled contracts and a projection of what Debbie and I have discussed for where our unsettled contracts will end up. Our Transportation Fund 3 is at a deficit of $416,067, which is better than where we thought we were going to be sitting, but that is why I will go into that with our expenditures. $601,153 in revenue, $836,952 in expenditures, which will bring us to a larger deficit of $651,866. We were given authority to buy a brand new bus last year, and we had put the order in early enough, but that was not actually delivered before June 30th. So we had to move that budget out of 12-13 and move it into 13-14, and this is why we expected our expenditures to be $100,000 more because of the bus for this year. So we expect to have Fund 1 and Fund 3 together. Our audited was $2,669,371. We're going to bring in $11,266,289, which includes the $845,000. Our expenditures will be $10,769,799, which will bring our ending fund balance to $3,165,861, which is a little bit higher than where we kind of expected to be when we had originally brought the budget forward in June. Fund 5, we have our facilities, our taconite money, our deferred maintenance, our equipment and health and safety. Facilities, we have $69,918, with us bringing in the revenues of $198,815 and expenditures of $202,696. We expect our fund balance to go down to $66,037. And I have included an attachment on page 9.33, which has the breakdown of all of our facilities funding and what we have spending out of there, including our leases and the projects that you had approved to go forward with in June. Just going down the list, I will skip down to Fund 4, because that's one of the things I wanted to touch base on. Fund 4 is our community ed, and as of right now, it looks like our main community education has $917 as an audited fund balance. We're going to bring in $96,738, but we're going to spend $118,917. So we are going to deficit spend by $21,262. We will have to move some of that to our Fund 1 because we are not allowed to deficit spend in Fund 4. And I know that we had discussed this at our budget planning meetings. So this might be something that we need to address come the spring with next year's budget.
Excuse me, Candace, what line was that again?
Line number 36.
36, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Going down, ECFE, $7,445. We're looking to bring in $50,723 and spend $57,205. So we will be bringing our fund balance down to $963. Our school readiness is at $11,874. So, and we're expected to bring in $28,000 and spend $39,560. So we will have $314 left in there. Skipping down to line 43, our OPEB is looking at $1,417,895. We'll have $145,000 coming in, and we'll be spending $259,348 to bring our fund balance, or our balance down to $1,303,547. 9.33 was the facilities, and then 9.34 is just an overall fund balance for our regular equipment fund. So we had $60,515 at the end of 2013. We had projected equipment revenue of $117,320. And all of these different buildings that had expenditures come out, those are actual expenditures to date of what was approved back in June, which I did not include by buildings. So, and then 9.35 was our technology set aside. Do you guys have any questions?
Can you explain how you divide out the staff development funds and why there's such a difference between sites?
What we did was we based it on a percentage for district, and then we based the rest of it on enrollment.
Thank you.
Oh, do
The
we-
administration recommends that the board approve the revised budget.
I'll move that we approve the revised budget.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 9.4, public hearing on 2013-2014 budget and proposed pay 2014 levy, otherwise known as truth and taxation time.
We have already fulfilled the first requirement of our public hearing, which is to go over the revised budget. And we do have Kathy Erickson, who is a finance specialist with ARC, who's going to share information with the board with regard to the 2013 payable 2014 levy. So Kathy, if you want to step to the podium and...
I'd like to thank Superintendent Hildy and Business Manager Candace Nellis for inviting me up here. I've been here a few years and I've recognized some of you, and I think we have some new board members here in Evelyn. So congratulations on choosing some public service. Candace and Deb know that this is my favorite time of year, truth and taxation, and it's a pleasure to travel around to our member districts and help share and spread the information about your levy certification. I especially enjoy coming to districts who have levies that are going down and not up. I just last week went to a district who is the second highest increase in our region, and now I'm attending the district who's the second lowest decrease. So you have the second highest decrease of the 30 districts that we support. So that's nice. So I'm not surprised that we have no one here, it appears, from the public who came to ask any questions about your levy certification at your truth and taxation hearing. I'm already hearing news from some of our other member districts that they are expecting some pretty significant crowds at some of their truth and taxation hearings coming up, because we are having some significant increases region-wide. Candace provided you some handouts, and I just want to touch on a few things on each of those. And you have a bar graph that shows your percent change from last year, and just want to touch on a few things that happened for you, which are all good news. The first column is your general RMV voter, which is your operating referendum. And even though you did nothing to change your referendum, you had your voters approve $700 a pupil a few years back. The law changed to provide better equalization, meaning more aid, less levy on your taxpayers. So even though you have the same amount, you actually have less levy because you're going to get some more state aid. So the reason you're seeing that drop of almost 20% is because you're going to get more money from the state of Minnesota. Most districts that have referendums saw this happen, at least to some extent. Yours was fairly significant compared to some of the other districts. A 20% increase in aid was very good. That meant your equalization formula was in a position to collect more aid. We have one district in our region that, even with the new equalization provided by the state, they did not garner any extra state aid. They are very property wealthy up in Cook County, up on the shore. And even with their referendum, they did not see any benefit to this, but you guys did, which was great news. You also saw some changes in your taconite, and that was great news as well. And I'm sure your superintendent and business manager shared some of the effects of the 2013 legislative session. It was such a huge opportunity for our taconite districts. There's 15 taconite districts in the state, 14 of which are in Region 2 that I support, and we actually help out Crosby Ironton, which isn't in our region but is one of the taconite districts. And what you're seeing partially on this year's levy is the result of that legislation giving more tax relief to the taxpayers. There was a glitch in the law back in 2009 that even though your district generated reduction in your taxes, it wasn't able to be applied to your subsequent levy because they had just written one sentence wrong in legislation back in 2009. And we've worked for 3 years to try to get that changed, and finally this spring I testified at the Capitol 2 times, worked with several legislators, and when it passed, I cannot tell you, I was sitting in my office listening to the legislation on my headphones, watching it online, and it was very exciting, and I'm so happy for all of our member districts who are now going to reap the benefits. You are receiving You went from $590,000 in taconite relief last year to $714,000 in taconite tax relief this year. Huge boon on your district taxpayers. It's not bonus money for you guys, but you are going to see some bonus money coming up next year in other ways. But in relation to the levy certification, this is direct tax relief for the taxpayers, so this was great news. So part of the reason you're seeing some of these other categories drop, so if you look over at the OPEB bonding, which is the last column there, it looks like, ooh, maybe we're not levying for that bonding anymore. You really are, but it's being wiped out by your taconite. So your taconite tax relief is paying for that category rather than your taxpayers. So you still have OPEB obligations, you're just getting it from another funding source. So even though some of these categories look a little bit different, that's part of the reason why we're seeing that. So overall, you're seeing a net change in your levy by 37.17%. The other category, and Candace has some supplemental information about the NTC other category, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, and Candace can follow up with you, but you had some changes, just a few changes in there of things that went up and down. But again, that one gets wiped out all by taconite, so you don't actually see it here on the sheet, but you actually are levying approximately a little just under $500,000 in that category, which includes your operating capital, your safe schools, your reemployment, your health and safety, your lease levies, some deferred maintenance. And adjustments happen in that category from prior years as we get better information. So Candace can share with you all the detail behind that. We had quite a few adjustments this year from prior years that are kind of catching up now. Nothing that anyone here did, it's just as the state gets better information and final financials from you, then they go ahead and start changing it, because the majority of your levy right now is all estimates. You and your administration had to put in estimates to figure out what we're going to levy for, and then as better information comes together, they change that in subsequent levies. So does that kind of make sense? So one, congratulations on the taconite. That is a huge boon. Congratulations on the increase in your equalization aid for your referendum, which was another huge portion of why your levy went down from last year. And again, with some adjustments that happened, they kind of all leveled off, but you're going to see a little bit of decrease there too. So any questions on the categories and why they changed? On the next one, you got a pie chart that just shows your categories. And this is a great one, I think, to show that the majority of your levy certification is voter approved. Many districts have the majority of their levy as what we call other. So did you all get your property tax statements yet? So on your tax statement, there's a voter line and there's an other line. When you see voter and how much tax is in there, that's what the voters have approved. It could be an operating referendum, it could be bonded debt, it could be your OPEB debt, and then other is everything else that your district either is forced to levy or chooses to levy. So when you see voter, that means the majority of your levy is coming from your constituents saying, yes, we want to contribute. So this pie shows, and you can kind of share this with your constituents and the people in your neighborhoods, that what we're levying for, net of all the taconite proceeds, is basically what's left over as your voter-approved levy. So this is great news in terms of you have a community that's willing to contribute to your levy. So that's really good. Any questions on that?
Is this a typical distribution?
This is not typical. Taconite kind of skews things a little bit because community, so you don't see community yet on here because that's the first one that gets paid for by taconite. So Candace talked about that you're going to bring in X amount of money in revenue in community service, and the levy share is going to come from taconite rather than your taxpayers. You still have a tax obligation, it's just going to come from one source, not your taxpayers, so that's why you don't see it here. And then the next one in the pecking order is your NTC other, that big category that was just short of $500,000, and taconite is paying for all of that. So a district that doesn't have taconite is going to have more pies, more pieces in their pie that are going to be these non-voter approved areas. But because this is the way the law works, you are allowed to use your taconite for those items first, and the remainder comes from your voters.
Is this typical of taconite districts?
You were one of the higher recipients of new taconite money. Comparatively, I would say the only one who did better than you is Mountain Iron Buell. They only have 2 pieces to their pie, so you have 3. They only have 2 because all other categories got wiped out by taconite.
Okay.
And the law actually says taconite can only take 50% of your voter approved. So even if they had, so in Mountain Iron's case, they have so much taconite receipts, they have to give some to their city because they had to keep 50% of their referendum as voter approved. The taxpayers have to pay something because they agreed to contribute. So you are the silver medalist when it comes to taconite. The only other person would be Mountain Iron. And they're smaller than you, so that's why they're there. Any other questions on the pie? I used Evelyn Gilbert as my sample district in our region training for the similar sized districts. What we do is we take a statewide analysis of all districts by their adjusted ADM, figuring out how many pupils you have in your school district, and compared you to the 2 closest on each side of you. And so these are the 5 districts, including you, that are the closest in ADM, very similar to around 1,100 pupils. And when you show your levy certification to other districts who have almost the same pupils as you, you are a huge winner. If I'm Pipestone, Jasper, I would not be handing out this chart because they're the biggest levy comparatively. In some cases, we have districts that are the high, so we say, maybe you don't want to share that, but in your case, I think this is great for your property taxpayers and your community to know that comparatively to similar sized school districts, your levy is less than half. So you're needing to collect less from your taxpayers than most other districts similar in your size.
It's a good thing.
It's impressive.
Yes. There's a lot of jealous school districts when they saw that chart compared to their own. Finally, I have a taconite production credit chart. This is to show you what the taconite is doing as far as a contribution to your tax levy. If you didn't have taconite helping offset your levy obligations, if you look at the line graph that's over on the right-hand side, your levy would be the top line. That's how much you'd need to collect from your taxpayers for the same obligations if there wasn't taconite. So the bigger the gap between the top line and the second line is your level of contribution. Now we have some member taconite districts whose lines are very close together, so their contribution isn't anywhere near the $714,000 that you're getting. And lots of things play into taconite. If you ever want to have a conversation about taconite, give Deb your name and number and I will call you and I could talk all day about taconite. I won't do it here, but the spreadsheet that goes into calculating the distribution for taconite is about as long as this room. There is so much complexity that goes into how it all gets distributed. And schools aren't the only recipients. Cities, townships, counties also receive taconite. So there's all of these different pecking orders that go into figuring out who gets what money. But in your case, you were again one of the beneficiaries of this change. So if you look down at the bottom left-hand corner, last year's levy, taconite covered about 38.7% of your total tax obligations. Now in Pay 14, it's 56.4%. So over half of your tax obligations are now being covered by taconite. So this is great news. Let me just share with you that I was looking at next year's projections, and again, let me say these are projections. We never know what's going to happen to taconite. All we have to do is look back to 2009 and know that taconite can drop 50%, which means all of our revenues dropped over 50%. But right now, the credits are looking very similar for next year's levy as they are in this year's levy. So you could be expecting a similar reduction in your levy certification as you did last year, or this year. So again, these are just trends. If something happens, there's a 3-year running average, so it cushions the blow of if something really bad happens, say in calendar year 14, which will then affect 15, you still have the 2 prior years of high production that will help cushion what you're going to get. But if we get one bad year, then it will kind of trickle down for a couple years before we can wipe that out. But right now, just showing, so in that bar graph for Pay 14, you can see taconite is higher than what your taxpayers are going to be able to contribute for this year's levy. So again, this is great news. In the box there, that's the pecking order on how the taconite gets spread against what tax obligations you have, and you can see that community ed is first, the NTC other, then your OPEB. So that's why you saw things getting wiped out of your bar graph that you didn't see comparatively to last year. So overall, with the next two supplemental pages, I'm going to leave that to Candace. I'm not going to go over a lot of detail, and she can just talk about that. Yep.
Just a question here. I'm looking at 944
Okay.
and 43.
Okay.
Okay, and the bar graph on 44, local taxpayer share and taconite share,
Yep.
the total is 1,268,000.
Yep.
If there wasn't any taconite share
Yep.
on 43, our bar would be
You bet.
higher.
You absolutely.
But there would still be lower than three of the others that you have here. What would that difference be? Why would we still be lower
When you
than
look
those
at
other three?
When you look at these different school districts, they all have a different story to tell. A lot of them have debt service that's much higher than yours. And keep in mind, part of your debt service gets covered by taconite, so you have a separate obligation there that you get assistance for. Some of your equalization factors are better. So like with your operating referendum, getting almost 60%, 70% in aid versus maybe a more tax-rich district, they aren't going to get as much aid as you. So you could both have a $700 referendum. You're only collecting a little over 30% from your taxpayers. They might be collecting 60 or 70%. So again, having a different type of tax base can be a part of that. It could be just the stories that they're telling. You have OPEB. Not many districts throughout greater Minnesota outside of our region had the kind of obligations, the OPEB obligations that you have. And then when it gets wiped out by taconite, then you're in better condition than most. Did that help?
So, yeah, taconite is a big factor.
Huge factor. Yep.
This is going to be totally off key here a little bit, but is this strictly for taconite you're talking? Or what about when PolyMet does open up with copper nickel? Will that add on to this?
We do believe that the copper nickel is going to be taxed at the same production rates as iron ore. So we're not 100% sure how the distribution is going to happen, but the taxes are going to be the same. So how the copper nickel gets assessed and taxed, so the mining companies then pay into the pot, the tax rates are going to be the same for copper nickel. We just are not sure at this point how they're going to get redistributed back to all the entities.
So it may not change at all, or it may go up a little bit or a lot?
Could be. I would say
Okay.
yes to all. Any other questions on the certification?
As long as we don't have to keep PolyMet waiting for another 10 more years. We might see an increase. The whole state actually benefits by that.
Yep. And let me I just want to comment on one of the switches in the law that with the glitch in the law, you were only able to levy for the next year what you had on your levy certification, 95% of what you were paid in the year before, because you all know that your excess, your district accumulates more revenue than you actually get that you need based on your levy certification. And the law changed to say all that excess, it used to go back to the state of Minnesota's general fund. They changed the law to give it to the cities and townships within your district lines. That has changed. That hasn't changed, but the calculation has gotten better for you. So the tax relief is going to remain here with you first, and then any excess over and above that will still go to your cities and townships. It just won't be as of a greater rate than it was in the past. So right now, when I looked at your district, I think it was $173,000 for the projected fiscal year 14. That's how much your district in the production calculations, that spreadsheet that's as long as this room, has you earning over and above what you can reduce your taxes by, and that's going to get distributed to all the cities and townships in your district for this coming year in 2014. Now, as your allowed to retain that on your certification, that overage is going to get a little bit smaller. So your cities and townships are going to see less revenue, but your taxpayers get to see that benefit. So that's a good thing. So, but that law didn't change, but the amount that's going to get spread did change. Any other questions? I encourage, if you have any questions that maybe you don't want to ask now, again, send them through Candace or your superintendent, and I would be happy to follow up on any questions related to TAC-NITE or your levy certification. And with that, I'll turn it over to Candace to go over the details of certain portions of your levy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back.
So 9.45 and 9.46 are just going to give you the breakdown of each of the different categories. I guess I'll go over the major changes that we have of $10,000 or more. I think that's where we're going to have to just... for the reemployment adjustment, our adjustment is going to be a lot lower this year, and that can be just because we had more reemployment expenditures and we didn't have such a high adjustment for what we levied for. We also had a debt excess reduction, just catching up over this 3-year cycle, because when we're working with levies, we're working in 3 years. So just with it catching up and getting actuals, we're going to have those adjustments on debt excess. We're going to have all of these different safe school adjustments, health benefit adjustments. So that's just trying to catch us up for where we were at on actuals. Along with the building lease adjustments. Our health and safety adjustment was huge because we didn't have as many actual health and safety projects that we had projected out the previous year. On the equalized components, we now have a general education component, which is brand new this year. Our operating capital went down. And then our referendum split out into 3 tiers. Kathy, can you touch base on how that was broken out?
Yes. Your operating referendum used to be the first $700 was a tier 1, and then anything over $700. Since you're at $700, you were just qualifying for tier 1. The law changed and made the first $300 really good. Then from 301 to 760 was tier 2, which was the same equalization rate as the old tier 1. And then they added a tier 3, which you actually qualify for. You have a little complexity in your levy because when pupil units changed, they're changing for fiscal year 15, they're lowering the value of a student in number, but that you're not going to get any less revenue. Pupils used to, like high school pupils used to be weighted at 1.3. Now they're going to be weighted at 1.2. So they felt that they wanted to streamline the calculations of pupils. So everybody under 7th grade is 1.0, and then high schoolers 7 through 12 are 1.2 now. So they were going to make sure that you didn't get less revenue than what you got under the old way we calculated students. So your new referendum amount is $779 a pupil instead of $700. To get to the same, because your pupils are less, because we count them by pupils. Now that they made the pupil rate less, we needed to make the amount per pupil more so that you still get the same amount of revenue in the first year. So you now qualify for all 3 tiers of referendum revenue instead of just the first tier under the old way. And it almost doubled in tier 1, which is why you're seeing that 20% reduction. So when you look at your levy certification, and it went from resident pupils to adjusted pupils. And when we went to adjusted pupils, you are a open enrollment, not winner. That means you have more kids leaving your district than coming into your district. And with that, that meant that you needed to get more per pupil because you have less adjusted than you did resident. So that's bringing into the factor of getting you up to the $779 amount per pupil because you now are being counted at less pupils than you were before. But you're still going to get the same amount of revenue this first year. Now, because you're an open enrollment, a more volatile district, you can probably see more movement per year than other districts because you have a charter school nearby, you have neighboring districts nearby. Should your pupils continue to decline, so will your revenue after this first year. They're equalizing you in the pay 14 for fiscal year 15, but after that, if your students continue to decline, so will your referendum revenue. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Based on this year's student number, though.
Based on fiscal year 15's new adjusted pupil counts, which are all estimates right now, but once they get to actual, that's your baseline, and from that point forward, then you will, but if you go up, if you start retaining some of your kids or bringing in kids from other districts, as your adjusted grows, so will your referendum revenue. So if you think of it positively, if you can think, you know, that maybe you could retain some of your own students or even attract some students from neighboring areas, you could actually increase your referendum revenue. So it's, for these districts, like in this cluster up here, which you have closer neighboring districts, down in the south end of our region, near Cloquet, Esco, Carlton, Renshaw, they kind of have a lot of open enrollment movement down there. Their districts too are thinking, I got to keep better track of my referendum revenue now because it's going to move as my students move around. Does that help? Perfect.
And then just moving down the list, we have the TAC levy adjustment, which increased to the $714,500. So this just kind of breaks it out by each grouping of community ed and your referendum and general education. On 9.47, this just shows our levy history back from K-84 that Jane started, and going back from when Evelyn and Gilbert were separate, and the totals of what those were. We are now at $553,169 compared to even going back to pay 12, which was $869,690.
Sorry, I'm getting kind of excited talking about the levy. When you look back and you see your levy certifications over $1 million, compared to now you're kind of less than $1 million, prior to 2002-2003 school year, part of the general education revenue you received came as a tax rate levy on your levy certification. So when we think of general education aid now, which is 100% aid and we get it all from the state, prior to 2003, about 30% of that revenue actually came as levy. When Governor Ventura was the governor back then, he did massive changes and said, hey, the state's going to pick up all the general education revenue. We're going to make it all aid. We're going to take away that levy component. We're going to let all levies go down. He maybe didn't have the foresight to say, where are we going to get the money in our state budget to pay for all of that, which is kind of why we've been in deficit for the last 10 years, trying to figure out how to get our budgets together. But that was why levies actually went down, started going down, was because the state said, we'll pay for it all as aid. When Candace mentioned the new student achievement levy, there's this new little tax rate levy that popped up, and it's 1/3% of your ANTC, which is nothing. It's not even 1%. It's 1/3 of 1%. But you can maybe start to speculate that they're thinking about starting to make that a little bit higher and a little bit higher. That is a revenue neutral levy that goes against your general education aid. So every dollar that you're getting in that new student achievement levy, which was like $17,000, you won't be getting $17,000 in general education aid in fiscal year 15. So they're starting to replace that with some of your levy. So as we start seeing us maybe coming full circle, that I wouldn't be surprised to keep track of that student achievement levy in the upcoming years to see if that percentage doesn't start growing a little bit more, making your taxpayers a little bit more responsible, and lowering the burden on the state and the aids that they have to pay. So, thank you.
Okay. Okay. 9.5, approve the 2013 payable 2014 levy. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 10.1, I'm sorry, 10.0 personnel, 10.1 Bill Peterson appointment to driver grounds position. This was because of Dennis's retirement, permanent
Right, he's
retirement?
been in this position during the leave, Dennis's leave.
Okay.
And now that Dennis has retired, this goes from being a temporary position to a permanent position.
Okay. Need a motion and a second on this? Russell?
I'll move.
Support. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 10.2, approve the extracurricular appointments.
There's just one appointment
one.
here. It's a volunteer boys
For
hockey
Mark
coach, Mark
Carpenter.
Carpin.
Okay. Has he gone through the background checks already? He has, okay. Thank you. Need a motion and a second?
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 11.0, new business. Resolution number 551 to expel student X1-14 for a period of 12 months.
This student violated several school policies, and the student and the parents have waived the right to an expulsion hearing. The administration is recommending the board approve the expulsion for a period of 12 months. And this is by resolution, so it requires a roll call.
Okay, Leon?
I'll move Resolution 551 to expel student X1-14.
And I'll support that.
Okay. Now the roll call.
Mona?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you. 11.2, superintendent search consultant update.
The only update I have for you is I did contact 4 search companies that are based in Minnesota and asked them for proposals. We had one firm that said that they did not want to submit a proposal. I have 2 firms that have submitted already and a 3rd firm that will send a proposal next week, which I will get out to you. But I wanted to give you the 2 proposals that I've received so that you have some time to review them. If I receive the 3rd proposal next week, I will mail that to you. And then probably on the next board meeting, which is December 10th, you could indicate which of these firms you would like to invite for an interview. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. 11.3, need to have a closed session to discuss AFSCME negotiation strategy. Need a motion and a second?
I'll move we go into closed session to discuss AFSCME negotiation strategy.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will go into closed session after we're through with the board agenda, down to the adjournment. And when we're done with the closed session, we will come back in and then we will adjourn the meeting. So, okay. Superintendent's report.
I only have one item. A couple of weeks ago, I was contacted by Mary Sumness, who is with the IRRB, and she's involved in economic development, but it's bringing outside organizations to the range for different purposes. But she contacted me because she has been working with some film production crews that are looking for sites to film portions of movies. And she had a crew that was looking for some old buildings that they wanted to use to shoot some scenes in these old buildings. So she wanted to know if we would allow them to go through our old junior high building and the manual arts building, which they did. And they are very interested in shooting several scenes in each of those buildings. And so I was contacted by Jerry Seppala, who is one of the producers with this this film production crew. And he's wondering if the school board would allow them to use those facilities. And the information he provided is that they would intend to occupy that space for 6 to 10 days, sometime during the month of April. They don't have the specific dates at this time, but they hope to have them identified in a couple of weeks. In exchange for using those locations, they would be willing to pay the district $100 per diem per day of usage, but they would guarantee a minimum of $1,000. The district would be named in the credits of the movie. this one I didn't quite understand, but they're going to have food service at the site every day, and school district personnel could be included in that food service. And they're also going to provide me with the insurance language that they would have for legal counsel to take a look at prior to us granting them the right to use those facilities. But we have had, remember, we had North Country that we did allow to use the old junior high building for the filming of some scenes. So the name of this movie is 12 Bells, and I believe it's a horror movie. But they were very enticed by the old welding area in the Manhill Arts Building. Which, if you've been down there, it's pretty scary. Mary Sumnus would not go down in that area with them. So I need to know if I should move forward and work with legal counsel to grant them usage of the buildings. It's for a short duration of time.
I think we
I have
should.
no problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've done it before in the
And
past.
will there be a provision that they leave the buildings in the same
Yes.
condition they found
Put
them?
back on the old contract.
Didn't
that I had before.
Didn't we-
Or better.
Yes.
Yeah, or better.
They have to restore anything that they changed from the last one, which included outside too.
I'll make sure that provision is included.
Yeah, any trucks and that might be on the property and screw up the grass and stuff like
They
that.
That would be my concern,
Yeah.
or parking lot damage
They
or something
did
like
the
that.
same thing, yeah.
Okay,
I don't think they can damage the building.
No,
but that's all I have.
okay, thank you. Board member topics.
Oh, I do want to point out one other thing I included in your board packet. I made a copy of this postcard for you because Mr. Bob Kesty, who's a retired teacher of ours, found this, and he thought that you might be interested in seeing a postcard that was from back in 1915. And he actually took time to kind of label the names of the buildings that were in district, so I put that in your board packet.
Way they
That's all.
changed. Some have changed, some haven't. Okay. Mona, we'll start with you today. How's that? Board member topics. Beth, welcome.
Thanks. I had conferences.
I figured you did this.
Oh, I was just wondering on the facilities fund, we're only showing 2 projects going forward. And one is in the Gilbert to replace
What's the number on that one, Tom?
9.33.
So we can all look at it.
And this is out of the funding on the bond issue, right, with IRRB and all. Is that what we're?
The bonding money is
Yeah.
not part of this facilities fund. That's a separate grant altogether, so we do not show that in our facilities fund.
Oh, okay, so we're actually going to move forward with more projects.
We're moving
than what we're
forward
showing
with those
here.
projects, but if you remember, as we begin working on those projects and we receive invoices billing us for those, we will pay those, and then we will submit those invoices to the IRRB, and they will reimburse us within about a 2-week period of time. So that's totally separate money.
Okay, so actually in there too is the roof in Gilbert then, that'll go, that'll
That's
move
one of the-
forward also. and,
Yes, that's
okay.
moving forward.
There's actually 6 projects involved in that whole thing. Okay.
Yep. Anything else, Tom?
No, that's it for me.
Mary?
Oh, I have a couple things. There is a group in the northeast region of the state. It goes from Carleton County all the way up to Cook County, Coaching, Itasca, Lake St. Louis. And it's called the Interagency Early Intervention Committee. And I am the area school board rep on that committee. It's a group whose membership is mandated by the state of Minnesota across all these different regions. And the purpose of the group is to try and identify children from birth through 3 years of age and get them services so that if they are behind in any developmental areas, they can get caught up by the time you come to school. There's money that comes from the state, and I guess I just wanted to mention it because one of the jobs of this group is to publicize that services are out there, and it's called Help Me Grow. You may have seen in doctors' offices or in school buildings posters that talk about Help Me Grow. There's also been a billboard campaign, and I know for sure that there's one as you head to the cities, just kind of at the edge of Carleton County. I'm not sure where the rest of them are. I don't travel that much, but I just wanted to make you aware that there is a way, if you have children or grandchildren or neighbors, or you know of somebody who might benefit, if you're concerned about their growth and development, that there is a group out there. It's called IEIC, but you want to look for Help Me Grow. And in this area, the person to call would be Tina at the Special Ed Co-op. She's the Child Find Coordinator, Tina Fredrickson. So and part of my job is to make people aware that this is out there, so I'm spreading the news here first. The other thing I wanted to bring up is we have done a cookie caper in December, and I think last year we kind of decided that there weren't a lot of home bakers left on the school board, and that we might want to be brainstorming some sort of a different idea, or simply say it's something that's run its course. But we'll only have one meeting in December.
Yes.
So
December 10th.
if we as a board did want to do something, I'm feeling like tonight is the night to be thinking about it, so that when we come on the 10th, we're prepared with whatever that might be.
I hate to see a tradition look like that.
Well, I guess my concern is when we don't have a lot of people who are home bakers, and we have some new people on the board, but what we had done is each of us as board members had baked goodies, and then they were shared with the staff in the different buildings. And over the years, as the makeup of the board has changed, there's been fewer people who are bakers and more people who are buyers. And it hasn't looked as nice, it hasn't felt as sincere, maybe because we weren't investing our time baking.
It was 5 dozen per person, wasn't it?
Yes.
So I don't know. Are you a baker, Tom?
Not really.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm more qualified for spaghetti and meatballs.
Yeah. So just something for us to be thinking about. And like I said, it may just be something that has run its course. And that's it.
Okay. Well,
What, am I a baker? Or do I have a board member topic?
go for it, Mark.
I would participate in the cookie deal, and I do not have any board member topic.
I will participate and I will bake, but I have no board member topic either.
And I will bake also.
So are we back to baking?
Never too old to learn, I guess. So.
I love it.
Okay. Anyone else? We will break quickly and then we'll go into closed session and we'll come back out. I think we are going to have one small thing. We're going to be sending out some samples of the proposed new agenda, the consent agenda.
What
Debbie's
I
got some
will be doing
information
is
on it.
sending out some of those 200
Policies.
policies. Some samples of 200 policies that we do not have in place currently, but that we talk about consent agendas and that. And I'll send them out for you to review, but we talked about maybe making a decision at the reorganizational meeting as to whether or not we want to move in that direction, changing the way we have our...
That would be a good time to start that, actually. Starting beginning of the new year. So. Okay. Okay, take a short break. Thank you.